The Mercy Star, a massive hospital ship, drifted peacefully through the silent void of space. The ship had been sent by Earth's government on a mission of mercy to provide medical aid to the wounded and sick across the galaxy. Its sleek, white exterior was emblazoned with the symbol of peace, a large red cross against a backdrop of blue and green. For weeks, the crew had been traveling from planet to planet, delivering supplies and offering assistance wherever it was needed. To the galaxy, it was a symbol of humanity's goodwill, its dedication to helping those in need. On board, the atmosphere was calm. The ship's corridors echoed with the soft hum of machinery, and the crew moved in harmony, performing their duties without a sense of urgency. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing could disturb the peace of the Mercy Star. The crew was used to the quiet of space and the routine of their work. Little did they know, a storm was about to hit, one they could never have predicted. Without any warning, the alarms began to blare. Red alert! Red alert! The voice of the ship's AI crackled through the intercom system. The crew froze, their faces going pale. This was not the type of situation they were trained for. They were doctors, nurses, and medical technicians, trained to heal, not to fight. But now, the ship was under attack. In the command center, Captain Sarah Kent quickly sprang into action. A seasoned officer with years of experience, she had been on many missions, but none like this. Her hands flew over the controls as she scanned the monitors. The screen displayed a dozen alien ships approaching at high speed, their dark, menacing forms cutting through the blackness of space like predators closing in on their prey. "Who are they?" Captain Kent asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her calm exterior. The ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Daniel Shaw, quickly accessed the ship's database. "I don't know, Captain. They're not registered in any of our databases. They're new." Captain Kent's heart raced. The Mercy Star had never encountered anything like this before. There had been skirmishes in the galaxy, of course, but this was different. These ships were not simply attacking. They were hunting. Without any more time to waste, the alien ships opened fire. The first shots hit the ship's outer hull with a thunderous bang. Sparks flew from the walls, and the lights flickered violently. The Mercy Star shook as if it were a toy in the hands of a giant. Captain Kent gripped the arms of her chair as the entire ship lurched, sending the crew scrambling for stability. Another barrage of blasts came, and this time, the ship's shields began to fail. They were too powerful, much too powerful for a medical ship to handle. "All hands, brace for impact," Captain Kent shouted, her voice firm despite the panic rising within her. She knew the Mercy Star was unarmed, its sole purpose to provide help, not to defend itself. The thought of a battle seemed almost absurd. Yet, here they were. On the lower decks, crew members scrambled to close bulkheads and secure vital systems. In the medical bays, doctors and nurses tried to keep calm, but the reality of the situation was sinking in. The patients, many of whom were in critical condition, were now in even greater danger. Earth's hospital ship, a symbol of hope for so many, was under attack, and no one knew why. The alien ships continued their assault, relentless in their fire. Captain Kent's mind raced as she tried to process the situation. Who would attack a hospital ship? It didn't make sense. The Mercy Star was not a military vessel. It was neutral, protected by intergalactic laws. No one had the right to strike it. And yet there they were. "Shields at 15%, Lieutenant Shaw reported. His face was pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead. "We won't last much longer, Captain." "Prepare the escape pods," Captain Kent ordered, trying to keep her voice steady. "We have to get the patients out of here." But even as she gave the command, she knew it might already be too late. The Mercy Star was too large to escape quickly, and the alien ships were closing in fast. Her hand shook slightly as she watched the countdown to the next blast. The aliens were relentless, methodical. They weren't just attacking, they were targeting. And their aim was deadly accurate. Suddenly, The ship shuddered violently again, and the lights went out completely. Panic erupted in the command center. Captain Kent's mind was racing, but her voice was the only thing that kept the crew from falling apart. "Stay calm," she ordered, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to reassure, herself or them. "Get the backup power on. We need to keep the ship intact." But it was no use. The Mercy Star was taking too much damage, and its systems were failing faster than they could repair them. Then, just as the crew began to think the worst had happened, the unthinkable occurred. The alien ships, which had been attacking with precision, suddenly stopped firing. For a long, tense moment, there was nothing but silence, an eerie silence that felt colder than the depths of space itself. What's happening?" Lieutenant Shaw whispered. Before anyone could respond, a single transmission came through, cutting through the chaos. "We've made our point," the voice on the comms said coldly. "Consider this a warning. You will not be allowed to interfere any longer." Then, without another word, the alien ships turned and vanished into the blackness of space, leaving the Mercy Star crippled and drifting. Captain Kent stood in stunned silence, her mind still trying to process what had just happened. The crew exchanged worried glances, unsure of what to do next. One thing was clear: Earth was no longer safe. The aftermath of the brutal attack was a scene of chaos and confusion. The Mercy Star was barely holding together. It drifted in space, its once pristine white exterior now marred with blackened scars from the alien assault. The ship's hull had been breached in several areas, and several of the medical bays were now nothing more than twisted metal. There was no mistaking the severity of the damage. The Mercy Star had been attacked with ruthless precision. Captain Kent stood at the command center, her face pale and drawn. She had always prided herself on her ability to remain calm in a crisis, but this was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her hands trembled slightly as she wiped a smear of blood from her forehead. The fight for survival was far from over. "We've lost communications with the rest of the fleet," Lieutenant Shaw said, his voice low and tight with fear. "It's just us now." The words hung heavy in the air. The rest of the fleet, the ships that had been sent out on the same humanitarian mission, were no longer responding. If the Mercy Star couldn't reach them, that meant they were alone, vulnerable, isolated in a hostile galaxy. The thought sent a chill through Captain Kent's spine. "Is the distress signal still active?" she asked, her voice tight but determined. Shaw nodded, though his face was full of uncertainty. "Yes, Captain. But we're not getting any responses. Whoever attacked us, they've cut us off from the rest of the galaxy." It was then that the full scope of the situation hit her. The alien ships hadn't just attacked. They had made it clear they didn't want the Mercy Star to get out of this alive. The warning they delivered wasn't just about a single ship. It was about Earth itself. Captain Kent turned to the crew, trying to force herself to speak with the confidence she felt slipping away. "We need to repair the ship as much as we can. Set course for the nearest safe zone. We can't just sit here and wait for them to come back." "Captain," said Ensign Riley, one of the youngest crew members, "what if they return? What do we do then?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon, and Captain Kent knew there was no easy answer. Their ship had no weapons. It was a peaceful mission, and Earth's military presence in the galaxy was practically non-existent. If the aliens returned, the Mercy Star would be defenseless. And so would they all. "I don't know," Captain Kent admitted, her voice cracking. "But we'll make sure everyone on this ship survives. We'll hold on as long as we can." The crew exchanged uncertain looks. The weight of responsibility was bearing down on all of them now. Some were afraid, others were angry, but no one could deny that things had changed. They had been attacked for no reason they could understand. And the message was clear: Earth's peaceful approach to the galaxy was no longer an option. As the ship drifted into the silence of space, broken only by the low hum of the failing engines, Captain Kent knew they had to act quickly. Earth needed to be warned. But in this situation, How could they warn anyone if their own ship was barely functional? Hours passed in tense silence. The crew worked tirelessly to patch up systems where they could, but there were only so many hands and so much time. Captain Kent remained at the helm, her eyes constantly scanning the space outside the ship for any sign of the alien attackers. It was hard to shake the feeling that they were still out there, watching, waiting. The crew had only begun to accept the reality of their situation when it happened. A blip on the radar. "Captain, we've got something," Shaw said urgently. He was staring at the console, his face a mix of relief and fear. "There's a fleet. They're approaching us at high speed." Kent's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the distant signal she had hoped for. This was too close. "Can we identify them?" she asked. The silence that followed only deepened her concern. Shaw's fingers flew across the console, trying to bring up any data they could use. "They're coming in fast," Shaw said, his voice growing more strained with each passing second. "It's them, Captain. It's the same ships. They're back." Captain Kent's blood ran cold. She had hoped it was some sort of mistake, some misunderstanding, but there was no mistaking it now. The aliens were coming back, and this time, they weren't just warning them. They were coming to finish what they started. On the Mercy Star, the crew was preparing for the worst. There was no room for fear now, only the grim determination to survive. Captain Kent stood before her crew, her mind racing with plans and counterplans that she knew were useless. The Mercy Star wasn't a warship, and they didn't have time to turn it into one. "Get to the escape pods," Captain Kent ordered. "I want all non-essential personnel evacuated immediately. We'll hold the line here as long as we can." "Captain, with all due respect, we need to fight back. We can't just run and hide," Shaw said, his voice filled with urgency. "If we can't get help from Earth, we need to take the fight to them." Captain Kent's face tightened. She knew he was right. But fighting against these ships, these unknown deadly enemies, was something they were not prepared for. Still, there was no other choice. "All right, Shaw," Captain Kent said, her voice steady now. We fight. We fight for Earth. We fight for every life on this ship." The time for running was over. As the alien ships drew closer, the Mercy Star's crew made their final preparations. It wasn't going to be easy, but with Earth's survival hanging in the balance, they had no other choice. The only thing left now was to survive and send a message that no one could ignore. Earth was not a victim. Earth was a force to be reckoned with. The tension in the Mercy Star was palpable as the alien ships loomed ever closer. Captain Kent stood at the helm, staring out into the cold, dark void of space. The only sounds she could hear were the quiet hum of the ship's failing engines and the hurried movements of her crew as they prepared for what was to come. Each member knew that they faced an enemy they couldn't fully understand, and their odds of survival were slim. But there was no turning back now. "Captain," Lieutenant Shaw's voice broke through her thoughts. "The first ship is within range. We can't outrun them. What's the plan?" Kent took a deep breath. She had no clear plan, no strategy. All she had were instincts and the knowledge that, with every second, they were running out of time. "We'll fight back with everything we have. Prepare to activate the ship's defenses." "But Captain, we don't have any weapons. The Mercy Star was never built for combat." Shaw's voice trembled, but his resolve was clear. "I know," Kent said, her eyes hardening, "but we can't sit here and wait to die. We'll use everything we've got. Every piece of technology, every last ounce of our ingenuity. If we can't beat them in firepower, we'll beat them with resourcefulness." As the first alien ship closed in, the crew worked frantically to make the ship as defensible as possible. They sealed off compartments, reinforced weak spots, and activated every piece of technology that could potentially turn the tide. Despite the Mercy Star's lack of offensive weapons, they knew how to use the ship's other capabilities. Advanced shields, evasive maneuvers, and a handful of experimental drones designed for emergency rescues. The drones, though not meant for combat, could be turned into a last-ditch weapon of sorts. Kent wasn't sure if it would be enough, but they had no choice. The Mercy Star wasn't going down without a fight. Suddenly, a violent shudder ran through the ship as the first alien ship opened fire. The impact sent Captain Kent stumbling against the console, her vision momentarily blurring. The ship groaned under the assault, but the reinforced shields held, just barely. Kent's heart raced in her chest as she barked orders to her crew. "Status report," she demanded, her voice firm despite the rising panic inside her. "We've taken some damage, but the shields are holding. The engines are still functional, but if they hit us again, we'll lose power," Shaw replied, his face pale. "We need to do something. Now." "Activate the drones," Kent commanded, her voice unyielding. "It's our only chance." The drones were quickly deployed, their small, agile frames darting out into the blackness of space. They weren't much, but they could make a dent. They were equipped with a basic set of weapons and scanners, tools meant for rescue operations, but today, they would serve a far darker purpose. As the drones closed in on the alien ships, Kent's eyes were fixed on the screen, watching for any sign that their efforts might be working. The drones launched a barrage of laser blasts, aiming for weak points on the alien vessels. It was a desperate attempt, but it was all they had. The alien ships retaliated almost instantly. Their weapons were far more advanced, their firepower devastating. A drone was hit, its frame disintegrating in a burst of fire. A second drone followed soon after. But then, the third drone made contact, striking one of the alien ship's engines. It wasn't a direct hit, but the damage was enough to cause a brief malfunction in the alien vessel's systems. "Direct hit. We've damaged one of their engines," Shaw shouted, his voice tinged with both relief and disbelief. Kent allowed herself a brief moment of hope. "Keep up the fire. Every shot counts." But the battle was far from over. The alien ships regrouped, now more cautious and aggressive, knowing they couldn't take the Mercy Star lightly. They adjusted their tactics, launching a series of precise attacks designed to disable the ship completely. The Mercy Star shook violently as another blast struck the hull, this time breaching the outer layers. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as emergency systems kicked in. Smoke filled the corridors, and the crew scrambled to contain the damage. "Captain, we're losing hull integrity," Ensign Riley cried out from the communications station. "If we don't get those systems repaired, we won't survive another hit." Kent gritted her teeth, a cold determination filling her veins. "I know. We won't let them destroy us." She turned to Shaw, who was already working on a backup plan. "I'm going to make a run for their flagship," Shaw said, his voice low but resolute. "If I can get close enough, I can deploy a hacking virus that will mess with their systems. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down." Kent's eyes narrowed. "It's a suicide mission." "I know," Shaw said with a grim smile, "but we need every advantage we can get. I'll buy you time." Kent hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Do it. We'll hold them off as long as we can." As Shaw prepared to launch a small craft, Captain Kent's thoughts raced. This was no longer about just surviving. It was about making a statement. Earth might have been outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed in this fight, but they would not go down quietly. The galaxy would know that Earth would fight for its survival. It would stand tall, even in the face of impossible odds. The crew of the Mercy Star was ready for whatever came next, and though the outcome was uncertain, one thing was clear: Earth was no longer a victim. It was a force to be reckoned with. The Mercy Star groaned and shuddered under the relentless barrage of alien fire. The ship's outer hull was scarred and damaged, and the once brilliant shine of its surface had dulled beneath the constant assault. But Captain Kent knew the worst was yet to come. Her crew, though battered, was still fighting. And they wouldn't stop, not until their very last breath. "Status update," Kent shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The ship's emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. Shields are down to 30%, Captain, Ensign Riley reported, her face drawn in worry. We can't take much more of this. Kent's mind raced. They were close to the breaking point, and time was running out. But she wasn't about to let her crew die in vain. Not after everything they had endured. We can't let them destroy us. We need to hit them where it hurts. She glanced at Lieutenant Shaw, who was preparing to launch his small craft toward the enemy flagship. Shaw, are you ready? Shaw nodded, a grim determination on his face. I'm ready, but it's going to be tight. I'll need a distraction to get close enough. Kent's mind quickly formulated a plan. They had no offensive firepower left, but they had something else. Their ingenuity, their courage, and their willingness to do whatever it took to survive. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Let's make it as hard as possible for them to hit us. Shaw, once you launch, we'll cover you as best as we can. The crew scrambled to carry out her orders, each person moving with a sense of urgency that only came when survival was on the line. Kent felt a surge of pride for her team. They were facing certain death, yet they still fought. That, she knew, was the spirit of Earth. Evasive maneuvers, now, Kent commanded. The Mercy Star lurched as it veered off course, the ship tilting sharply to the left. The alien ships, seemingly caught off guard by the sudden shift, fired wildly, missing their target by mere inches. The ship's engines roared as the crew pushed the vessel to its limits, making impossible turns, darting and weaving through the blackness of space. Shaw's small craft, a sleek, agile vessel designed for emergency rescue operations, detached from the Mercy Star's docking bay. It darted into space, its engines firing up as Shaw expertly piloted it toward the alien flagship. The odds were stacked against him, but he had no choice. The Mercy Star was falling apart, and their only chance of survival rested on his ability to breach the enemy's defenses. The alien ships continued their relentless assault, but Shaw managed to stay out of their sights. He zoomed toward the flagship, using every bit of speed and agility his small craft possessed. It was a high-risk maneuver, but Shaw's focus was unshakable. He knew that if he failed, they were all done for. Come on, Shaw muttered to himself, sweat beading on his forehead as he navigated the treacherous battlefield. The flagship loomed ahead, its massive form casting an ominous shadow across the space surrounding it. Shaw's heart pounded in his chest as he approached. Meanwhile, on the Mercy Star, Captain Kent's eyes were fixed on the screens. She could see Shaw's craft on the tactical display, darting between the alien ships as they fired at him. Every shot that missed was a small victory, and she held her breath with each close call. The ship's damage was mounting. Hull breaches, system failures, fires breaking out in several compartments. But they were still alive, still fighting. Captain, we've lost all long-range weapons. Lieutenant Shaw's voice crackled through the comms. I'm moving in on the flagship. I need more time. Kent nodded, even though Shaw couldn't see her. You've got it, Shaw. We're giving you everything we've got. The crew braced themselves as the Mercy Star continued to evade the alien attacks, but it was clear that they couldn't hold out much longer. The ship's systems were failing fast, and every new hit pushed them closer to the edge. Yet, Kent remained resolute. Earth had never been a place to give up, and neither would they. In a split second, the Mercy Star veered sharply to the right, narrowly dodging a massive energy blast. The ship shook violently as the blast passed, but the crew held steady. They had no choice but to keep moving, keep fighting, until the very end. At that moment, Shaw's small craft hit a pocket of resistance. Alien fighters swarmed in from all directions, trying to prevent him from reaching his target. Shaw's pulse quickened, but he didn't falter. With one swift motion, he activated the last weapon in his arsenal, a powerful EMP pulse designed to disable enemy ships temporarily. The pulse shot out, hitting the closest alien fighter. The ship jerked to a halt, and the alien craft collided with another, triggering a chain reaction. Shaw didn't hesitate. He pushed his craft forward, using the brief window of opportunity to close the gap between him and the alien flagship. EMP pulse successful, Captain. Shaw's voice was filled with a mix of relief and determination. I'm almost there. Kent's grip tightened on the console as she watched Shaw's progress. The Mercy Star's engines were at their limit, but they were still moving, still fighting. You're doing great, Shaw. Just hold on a little longer. As Shaw inched closer to the flagship, the alien ships grew desperate. They began to focus their fire on him, trying to stop his progress before he could reach their flagship's weak points. But Shaw was skilled. He danced between the attacks, using the debris and wreckage from the ongoing battle as cover. The countdown to the final confrontation had begun. The alien forces would soon realize they were no longer in control. Earth's fury had been unleashed, and nothing, not even overwhelming odds, would stop them now. Shaw's heart raced as he maneuvered his small craft, now closing in on the alien flagship. The EMP pulse had done its job, at least for the moment. The alien ships surrounding him were scrambling to regain control, their systems temporarily disabled. But Shaw knew it wouldn't last. He had to move quickly if he wanted to make a real difference. The flagship loomed ahead, massive and imposing. The black and silver design of the vessel seemed to absorb the light around it, making it appear even more menacing. But Shaw had no time for hesitation. His hands gripped the controls, his eyes locked onto the glowing weak points of the enemy ship. Almost there, Shaw muttered under his breath. Just a little longer. His craft dodged another barrage of alien fire, the proximity of the shots causing his ship to shudder. The tiny vessel darted and weaved, faster than the enemy could react. He could feel the tension building in his chest, each second feeling like an eternity. Every missed shot from the enemy was a small victory. Every time they narrowly avoided him, the hope of victory grew just a little stronger. Captain. Shaw's voice crackled through the comms, now tight with urgency. I'm within range, ready to launch the payload. Do it, Shaw. Captain Kent's voice rang through, her own voice a mix of hope and command. This is our only shot. Shaw nodded to himself. With one last calculated maneuver, he positioned his craft directly beneath the alien flagship. The small vessel's underbelly exposed its most vulnerable spot, and Shaw launched the final weapon. An explosive payload designed to hit the alien ship's core power generators. It was a one-shot deal, but if it worked, it would cripple the flagship, potentially turning the tide of the battle. The moment the payload left the launch tube, Shaw twisted the controls and veered sharply to the left, just in time to avoid a devastating energy blast that tore through the space where he had been just a second before. The small craft barely escaped the explosion, its hull scraping against debris from the damaged alien ships around him. Payload launched. Shaw yelled into the comms as he sped away. It's on target. The Mercy Star continued its evasive maneuvers, its remaining crew members fighting with every ounce of their strength to keep the ship from falling apart. Captain Kent's eyes were fixed on the tactical display as the countdown began. The fate of the Mercy Star, and perhaps all of humanity, was in the balance. The alien flagship, now severely crippled from the EMP, struggled to retaliate. But it was too late. The explosive payload hit its mark. The space around the flagship erupted in a blinding burst of light. The explosion was so intense that the shockwave reverberated through the surrounding battlefield, sending shockwaves rippling through the debris. The flagship shuddered violently, its engine sputtering as its power core detonated, sending a cascade of destruction through the alien fleet. Shaw could hardly believe what he saw. The once mighty flagship, the symbol of the alien fleet's power, was now a hulking wreck, adrift in space, its lights flickering and systems failing. The alien ships that had been swarming around it now faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks. The loss of their flagship was more than just a physical blow. It was a psychological one. Direct hit. It's gone. The flagship's down. Shaw yelled, his voice filled with disbelief. On the Mercy Star, Captain Kent allowed herself a brief moment of relief. Her crew had done the impossible. The tide had shifted in their favor. "Excellent work, Shaw." Kent's voice was filled with pride. "You did it." But even as the Mercy Star's crew cheered, the battle was far from over. The alien fleet was still active, and they were now desperate. They'd lost their flagship, but they still had the numbers and the firepower to wipe out the Mercy Star. "Don't celebrate just yet," Kent reminded them, her voice cold and steely. "We still have a fight ahead of us." Shaw, who was now maneuvering back toward the Mercy Star, glanced back at the disabled alien fleet. He could see them regrouping, realigning their tactics. But the fear had set in. The Earthlings had proven themselves capable of striking back, and it was only a matter of time before they would hit again. The Mercy Star's hull groaned as it took another hit, a reminder that they weren't safe yet. But now, they had a chance. They had struck a significant blow, and for the first time since the attack began, hope had begun to flicker in the hearts of the crew. "We've got them on the ropes," Lieutenant Shaw said with a grin, though the battle was still ongoing. "Now let's finish this." Captain Kent nodded, her face set in a determined expression. "For Earth, for every life we're protecting. Let's make sure this never happens again." The Mercy Star's engines roared as it prepared to rejoin the battle, its crew ready to finish what they had started. With the flagship destroyed and their spirits renewed, the humans had shown the galaxy that they were not a species to be taken lightly. Earth was a force to be reckoned with, and the universe was about to learn that the hard way. As the alien fleet regrouped, the Mercy Star and its crew pressed on. It wasn't over yet, but they had just shifted the balance in their favor, and they wouldn't stop until the fight was won. The battlefield had changed. Where once the alien fleet had been a seemingly unstoppable force, it was now a disorganized swarm, struggling to regroup after the loss of their flagship. The Mercy Star moved through the chaos, its crew working with relentless determination. The tide had turned, but the victory wasn't assured yet. There was still work to be done. Captain Kent stood at the helm of the Mercy Star, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as the alien ships scrambled to adjust their tactics. The damage was visible: mangled hulls, flickering lights, and the slow drift of disabled vessels. But there were still enough enemies left to make the battle far from over. "Status report," she demanded, her voice calm but full of authority. Lieutenant Shaw, seated at the tactical console, was scanning the situation. "They're disorganized, Captain, but they're still dangerous. They're trying to rally, but they're hurting. If we strike now, we can wipe them out for good." Kent nodded. It was the opening they had been waiting for, but she knew that one wrong move could lead to disaster. The Mercy Star was battered, and her crew was tired. But they weren't about to back down. They had something the aliens didn't: resolve. And the Mercy Star wasn't about to let up. "Take us in, Shaw," she ordered. "Let's finish this." The ship surged forward, cutting through the debris field with deadly precision. The remaining alien ships were beginning to regroup, their movements more coordinated now, but they were still facing a fleet that had just suffered a massive blow. They had underestimated humanity once before. Now, they would pay the price. The Mercy Star unleashed its weapons, the bright pulses of energy tearing through the void. The alien ships, despite their superior technology, couldn't react fast enough. Shaw was a master at the helm, expertly dodging incoming fire and guiding their ship into the heart of the enemy formation. The aliens retaliated fiercely, their remaining ships lashing out with powerful energy blasts. But the Mercy Star's shields held, absorbing the impacts, while the crew retaliated with deadly accuracy. Another alien ship exploded in a burst of flame, its hull breaking apart under the relentless assault. "Keep it up, everyone," Captain Kent called out, her voice unwavering. "This is our moment. We can't let them recover." Despite the chaos around them, the crew responded with renewed focus. The battle was fierce, but the morale was high. They had struck back, and now they were making their mark. The enemies who had dared to attack their world were realizing that they had picked the wrong adversary. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and Earth would never bow to foreign invaders. As the final alien ships began to retreat, the crew of the Mercy Star pressed on. There was no mercy left in their hearts for the invaders. This was no longer a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future, for the freedom of every human life that had been threatened by these extraterrestrial forces. The last of the alien ships attempted to make a run for it, but Shaw was quick to intercept them. His hands danced over the controls, his eyes narrowing as the ship's weapons locked onto the fleeing vessel. With a final barrage, the enemy ship erupted in a fiery explosion, its engines collapsing in on themselves. The Mercy Star had done it. The enemy fleet was no more. The battle had been won. Kent exhaled a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in what felt like hours. She had led her crew to victory, and the galaxy would now know that Earth was not to be trifled with. "We did it," Lieutenant Shaw said, his voice filled with awe. "It's over." Captain Kent nodded, her gaze fixed on the viewscreen as the wreckage of the alien fleet drifted in the void. "No, Shaw," she said quietly. "This isn't just over. This is a message." The Mercy Star turned slowly, its damaged but resilient hull facing the stars. The humans had proven themselves to be more than just survivors. They were fighters. And now, the universe would know the truth about Earth. For every ship they lost, for every life they risked, for every battle they fought, they had stood their ground. Humanity had just taken its place among the stars, and anyone who dared challenge them would soon learn. Earth would never back down. Captain Kent straightened in her chair, her eyes blazing with determination. Earth isn't just a planet anymore. It's an empire. The crew of the Mercy Star looked out at the endless expanse of space before them. They had emerged victorious, not through overwhelming strength, but through the strength of their will. And now, they would make sure the galaxy knew that Earth, once considered weak, had found its power. The universe had just received a warning. The deathworlders were here, and no one would ever attack them again. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. The remains of the alien fleet drifted in the void, a testament to the brutal force humanity had unleashed in retaliation. The Mercy Star, though battered and scarred, was victorious, and its crew stood proudly at their posts. The silence that followed the storm was almost deafening, but it was a silence of triumph, of hard-won peace. Captain Kent stood at the front of the bridge, gazing out into the vast expanse of space. The stars twinkled peacefully, but beneath that calm lay the knowledge that the balance had shifted. Earth had taken its first true step into the galaxy as a power not to be ignored. "We've sent a message today," she murmured, her voice low but full of conviction. "We've shown them that we don't back down." Lieutenant Shaw, his face still flushed from the intensity of the battle, stepped up beside her. "They never saw it coming. The Council, the aliens, they thought we were weak." "They thought wrong," Kent replied, her eyes narrowing. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy will see us differently now. They'll think twice before crossing Earth again." The crew of the Mercy Star had every right to celebrate. They had fought with valor, and their victory was won for the history books. But Kent knew that the true impact of this battle would be felt far beyond the confines of their ship. Earth had just made its mark on the galaxy, and things would never be the same. As the Mercy Star limped toward a nearby Allied station for repairs, Kent and her team began to plan. The victory was crucial, but the war was not yet won. The galaxy was filled with powerful factions, and while Earth had earned their respect, they still had much to prove. They were no longer just a planet on the fringe of galactic affairs. They were now a player, and with that came new challenges. "Captain," Shaw interrupted her thoughts, "we've received a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to talk." Kent stiffened. The Galactic Council, the same body that had expelled Earth, that had looked down on humanity as insignificant. Now they wanted to talk. She wasn't sure whether to laugh or be suspicious. "Put it through," she said, her voice calm, but with an edge that made it clear she wasn't about to be intimidated. A holographic image flickered to life before them, revealing the faces of several prominent council members. There was a brief moment of silence. Then one of them, an alien with smooth purple skin and elongated features, spoke. "Captain Kent, we have seen what your fleet is capable of. The attack on your hospital ship, it was an error. We acknowledge that. The Council would like to open negotiations." Kent's eyes narrowed. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The moment when Earth would no longer be treated as a second-class citizen in the galaxy. They had earned this. "I'm listening," she said, her voice unwavering. The alien hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "We recognize that Earth possesses untapped potential. We would like to offer you a seat at the table, in exchange for peace and cooperation. We can ensure your safety from other hostile factions. The galaxy has much to offer you, Captain. We were wrong to underestimate humanity." Kent felt a rush of satisfaction. It had worked. The message had been sent and received loud and clear. The aliens, once so smug in their belief that humanity was insignificant, were now offering peace on their terms. But Kent wasn't about to be anyone's pawn. "We don't need your protection," she said firmly. "And as for your negotiations, well, Earth is in no need of your benevolence. You expelled us once. Now you'll answer to us. I'll agree to your peace only on one condition. Earth will never again be treated as a subordinate in your precious council. We are not here to be your allies. We are here to take our rightful place in the galaxy, and we will be respected, or we will fight to make sure that happens." There was a long pause on the transmission. The alien leader seemed taken aback, but there was no denying the power in Kent's words. The galaxy would have to acknowledge Earth's strength from now on. This was no longer about survival. This was about sovereignty. The alien leader finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Your demands are bold, Captain, but perhaps we have underestimated humanity. You are right to stand firm. The Council will consider your terms." "Good," Kent replied, her gaze cold. "And know this, we are not here to be subjugated. This is only the beginning. If the galaxy wants peace with Earth, they'll have to respect us. Anything less will be met with the full force of humanity's will." With that, the transmission ended, and the silence that followed was thick with anticipation. The Mercy Star had delivered its final blow, not in fire or destruction, but in the unwavering conviction of its crew. Captain Kent turned to face her crew, her voice resolute. "This is just the start, everyone. The universe now knows that Earth is not just a planet to be ignored. We've set the stage for something far greater. We've fought for our place in the galaxy. Now let's ensure the universe never forgets the name Earth." And as the Mercy Star continued its journey through the stars, the crew knew one thing for certain. Earth was no longer a world on the edge of the universe. It was a force that would shape the future of the galaxy, and no one would dare challenge it again.